As well, an Asian Conservative councillor in Batley-on-Spen has written in the Times today accusing the Labour Party of stoking controversy and sowing division between British Indian and British Pakistani communities in that recent Batley-on-Spen by-election, which of course Labour won by 323 votes. Councillor Gurjit Kaur-Bains claims that Labour see those from ethnic minority communities as, quote, nothing but vote banks, and she says they are unleashing sectarian politics in the UK. Well, here to talk to us about this is GBNews' very own Inaya Folarin Iman. Inaya, thanks for joining us. We know you covered the Batley-on-Spen by-election for us. Do you recognise what she's saying? Is there any truth to it?
I think it's been really interesting how Keir Starmer's Labour Party has essentially tried to spin the result of Batley-on-Spen, in his words, as a victory for hope over division. And obviously this is in contrast to what the results actually showed. They held a seat that they held since 1997. Their majority went from 3,500 to a few hundred. And this is obviously an opposition party, when actually it's normal for an opposition party to do well in by-elections. It's quite rare for an incumbent government to actually be successful.
These are the results on screen. As you say, 300 votes, 323 votes, I think, within it. George Galloway pulled pretty well, though, as well.
Well, exactly. I mean, there's not a lot there for the Labour Party to be singing about. I mean, George Galloway, with only a kind of 4-week campaign, was able to get nearly a quarter of the vote. But in relation to this particular article, I think that she's very right. I think in particular she's referring to one of the leaflets that was the campaign material of the Labour Party, which showed Boris Johnson shaking hands with Prime Minister Modi of India in an attempt to say that the Conservatives were essentially on the side of India in the territorially disputed Kashmir, whereas the Labour Party were on the side of Pakistan, essentially. And many people have argued that this is effectively playing a kind of sectarian politics in Batley-on-Spen, where you have roads that are being with lots of potholes, you have shops completely desolate and lack of economic investment. Instead of speaking about those local issues that transcend racial, ethnic or religious divides, the Labour Party are appealing to people primarily on their ethnic and religious identity and contributing, some might argue, to sectarian tensions.
Interestingly, Stephen Bush wrote a piece in the Times about this yesterday. I think he was suggesting this was kind of Labour's fourth position on Kashmir in as many years. But it seemed to have worked. Isn't that the bottom line? That it may, I mean, there was only 300 votes in it. It may have shifted enough votes to work.
Well, I'm not sure. I think actually what it happened in the campaign, that a lot of the debate surrounded around George Galloway's territory. He is known to be very passionate about international issues, such as Palestine, such as Kashmir, and that could have contributed to nearly a quarter of the vote actually going to George Galloway. So I think that there's a lot of factors that contributed to that very, very slim victory. Perhaps the Matt Hancock effect, some of the tensions around the constituency, and people even feeling sympathetic for Kim Leadbeater in terms of some of the intimidation she faced. It's not obvious that actually that particular method or actually was effective, but very quickly, I think it's very short-termist, because whilst you might get votes in the short term, what it does is sow the seeds of division. And in the article, she's saying that they don't see them as British. Actually, if you want to appeal to voters, regardless of background, then appeal to the issues that matter to all of us, whether our kids have a better future, whether the economy is growing, not the sectarian
Labour on the national political stage have accused, a number of Labour MPs have accused the Conservatives of kind of wheeling out ethnic minority MPs in a tokenistic way. And I suppose what Gurjit, this councillor, is saying is that actually it's almost Labour tokenising these minorities by sort of, you know, only appealing to their vote and their identity when they need elections, whereas she's saying the Conservatives sort of appeal to people based on the issues that matter in their local area. I mean, we've seen at the moment we have an incredibly ethnically diverse cabinet. Of course, Conservatives. I think Kwasi Kwarteng, first black cabinet minister. Labour don't like accepting the fact that actually Conservatives are ethnic minority too, and actually they're losing quite a lot of ground amongst ethnic minorities.
Well, I think obviously she is a Conservative councillor, so she's probably going to have a positive view of the Conservative Party. But I absolutely think that the Conservatives have often played that game as well. I mean, under Theresa May's government, she talks about burning injustices in relation to race and the Lammy Review, and I think sometimes they too have played that game. But I think you're right, actually, when you appeal to people solely based off of their group identity, what that often means is you end up having to delegitimise people that don't conform to a particular conception of what that identity category is. So if you are a black person who doesn't, for example, believe that Britain is fundamentally or institutionally racist, then your authenticity as a black person is questioned. And we often see that in regards to Muslim individuals who don't necessarily think that Islamophobia is rife. Their authenticity as a Muslim is questioned. So I think this short-termist strategy often actually sows greater division in the long term.